Out of all places in the world that were decolonialized, Hong Kong stands unique, not because instead of gaining independence, it was transferred from one country to another, but also because the population wanted to go back after colonialism. Meanwhile, most countries were happy for it to end. And during the Hong Kong protests, there was a large divide between people who wanted Hong Kong to separate or just to join Britain again. However, let's take a look into the other belief. Let's see what would happen if Hong Kong became a completely independent country, kinda like Singapore. Now, believe it or not, this almost happened. In 2019, the Hong Kong Parliament building was invaded by protesters, and all the guards literally just abandoned the building. All of the Parliament members were evacuated, and protesters eventually broke in and stormed the Parliament. They then graffitied it, put flags everywhere, and left a scene for the people to see. However, once there, they didn't really know what to do after that. Some thought of declaring independence from China, but others thought that they should just leave and that the day's protests were over. Still, they ultimately decided just to leave and to let the people clean up the pieces once they got back to the parliament. This video is not about if Hong Kong had declared independence that day, because if they had, the police would have probably just came in as well as the military, and the scene would have been pretty bloody. However, let's just say that for some reason, Hong Kong declares independence and becomes a separate country. Then what? If you had asked Hong Kong the question of independence during British rule, they would have likely said for British rule to continue, as independence was not so popular. This was not because the local population wasn't proud to be from Hong Kong, but another reason that I'm gonna get into. Hong Kong would have a population of 7.4 million people, making it 104th place in the world, just below Sierra Leone and above Laos. Hong Kong's GDP would be 341 billion, which would make it just below South Africa but above Ireland. Hong Kong's land area would be 1,104 square kilometers, which would place it just below Comoros but above Sao Tome and Principe, two countries I'm sure no one's ever heard of. Hong Kong would also be home to giant companies such as HSBC, New World Development, and even China Mobile, which I'm sure would get pretty awkward. As for a flag, well, the British flag probably wouldn't work for an independent country, so a new one would have to be chosen. Most likely, it would be this flag, or my personal pick, which basically just takes the stars off because the stars represent China. Now, the CCP is gonna like this section, but could Hong Kong survive as an independent country? Well, I hate to break the news, probably not without China's help. Because Hong Kong gets most of its food, water, and electricity from China. Now, food isn't really much of an issue because they can always subsidize that with shipments from other countries. Also, fishing is really big in Hong Kong. As for water and electricity, well, Hong Kong is on its way to providing its own water, considering many reservoirs have been built and desalination plants are being constructed. However, for electricity, there isn't much of a move to get Hong Kong to generate its own electricity. Most of it still comes from China. However, more nuclear power plants could be built, but overall, it's unlikely Hong Kong will ever be able to generate its own electricity. So, Hong Kong would be without much electricity and without much water, so it would not be able to survive that well. Culturally, though, Hong Kong is very different from mainland China. They speak a different language, their history is different, and their traditions are also very unique, so culturally, Hong Kong could flourish. As well as that, with a very hostile regime to its north, Hong Kong would also have to pour a lot of money into a military, a coast guard, and a better police force. This would not be good for Hong Kong, however, because Hong Kong has always benefited from not having to pour money into a military. And although Hong Kong would be able to defend itself with a big military, without a military, Hong Kong would be able to pour more money into, of course, upgrading its water and electricity, and also into developing the city, which is already what Hong Kong benefits from. Hong Kong having protection from outside forces mean Hong Kong can focus more on what's going on within its borders rather than having to worry about outside forces. That said, support for rejoining Britain is higher. However, recently there was a Hong Kong Parliament created in Richmond, Canada, and this aims to become a fully recognized Hong Kong government in exile. Whether this will become true, well, we'll see. Either way, the question of Hong Kong's independence isn't over, and for a long time, people will still be discussing it. So, do you think Hong Kong could survive as an independent country? How will the economy do? And will this finally fix the air pollution? That's a very good question.